History isn't a static line drawn on a map. It's a shifting boundary, forged in the spaces where civilizations meet, clash, and blur together. From the bustling merchant ports of Tyre and the towering battlements of Carthage, to the cryptic whispers of the Delphic Oracle and the bloody waters of the Peloponnesian War, this is where the known world met the unknown. Welcome to Frontiers of Antiquity. Join us as we look beneath the surface of the classical world to uncover the human rivalries, the structural conflicts, and the ancient histories that built our modern world.
So I want you to picture a scene for me. We're in the 6th century BCE, stepping into the dim, really incense-heavy air of a grand ancient temple.
Oh, yeah, and it's not just some local shrine, right? The massive stone walls around you are covered in the spoils of war, elaborate offerings to the gods.
Exactly, just literal centuries of history hanging in the shadows. And the air is thick with the smell of sacrificial fires and, sea salt.
Right. It's a very intense sensory environment.
It is. So a man walks in, he's charismatic, commanding, and he moves with this absolute undeniable purpose. He bypasses the high priests entirely.
Just walks right past them.
Just completely ignores them. He walks right up to a decaying bronze shield mounted on the stone. It's cracked, bloodstained, centuries old.
Okay, wow.
And he points a finger at the center of the bronze and casually tells the stunned priest, "That's my shield. I used it in the Trojan War 600 years ago."
It is such an incredibly vivid image. And to fully ground this for you, the history students listening, we really need the exact historical and geographical coordinates here.
Yeah, where exactly are we?
So this theatrical moment is unfolding at the ancient Temple of Hera in Argos.
Argos, right.
The temple was this huge repository of cultural memory. And the man making this absolutely outrageous claim to the priests, that is Pythagoras.
I have to pause you right there because, that name carries so much baggage.
Oh, definitely.
If you are listening to this deep dive, you almost certainly know Pythagoras as the triangle guy. He is the bane of high school geometry students everywhere. We are taught to think of him as this stern mathematician, this pillar of logic. So the central mystery we have to unravel today is a massive paradox.
It really is.
How did a man who confidently claimed to be a reincarnated ancient warrior, a guy pointing at a rusty shield and claiming past life ownership, also become the foundational mind behind rational science, geometry, and mathematical physics?
It completely breaks our modern brains, honestly. Because, we inherently want to categorize historical figures.
We like our neat little boxes.
Yeah, exactly. We like our scientists to be rigidly rational, operating in laboratories, and our mystics to be highly spiritual, operating in temples.
Right. We want a giant, impenetrable wall between those two worlds.
We do. But what is so vital to understand about the 6th century BCE Mediterranean world is that for Pythagoras, there was no wall.
None at all.
None. The magic and the math were the exact same discipline.
Today, we're taking a massive stack of classical historical texts and ancient biographies to decode the real Pythagoras. We're specifically looking at the writings of Ovid, Porphyry, and Diogenes Laërtius.
Yes, those are our primary lenses here.
And our mission today is to strip away that sanitized, modern idea of him as just, a guy in a toga drawing right angles in the dirt.
Right, the textbook version.
Yeah, we are plunging into a world where numbers were sacred and where understanding geometry was considered the literal only way to save your immortal soul.
But to do that properly, we really have to evaluate our sources carefully. It is so important for history students to know that Pythagoras himself wrote absolutely nothing down. Everything we know about him comes from writers who lived centuries after his death.
So it's all secondhand, or thousandth-hand knowledge.
Pretty much. Diogenes Laërtius, for example, he compiled his biographies of Greek philosophers in the 3rd century CE. That is roughly 800 years later.
Wow, 800 years. That's like us writing about the Magna Carta from memory.
Exactly. And Porphyry, a Neoplatonic philosopher, he wrote his life of Pythagoras around that same time.
And what about Ovid?
Right. Ovid, the Roman poet, captured the Pythagorean philosophy in his Metamorphoses in the 1st century CE. So we are reading history through the lens of legend here.
We're analyzing texts that were deeply invested in portraying him as this superhuman sage.
Exactly. They had an agenda.
Which means we really have to read between the lines. If we're going to understand the philosophy, we have to start where Pythagoras himself started his grand narrative. We have to rewind the clock back over 3,000 years to the late Bronze Age. We are starting at the ancient city of Troy, or Ilium, as it was also known.
Right, the setting of the Iliad.
Yep. And if you want to place this on a modern map, we are looking at the archaeological site of Hizarlik, which sits in the Çanakkale province of modern Turkey.
It's a fascinating site to visit today.
It really is. The traditional historical date for the fall of Troy is roughly 1184 BCE.
And, the Trojan War is the absolute foundational epic of Greek culture. What makes Pythagoras' claim in the Temple of Hera so striking is its specificity.
Right. He doesn't just say, I was a soldier.
Exactly. He does not offer a vague, generic past life. He tells the priests, I was a prominent Trojan warrior named Euphorbus.
Euphorbus.
Yes. And if we turn to the text of the Iliad, Euphorbus is a recognized figure, but, well, he meets a brutally violent end.
He doesn't survive the epic.
No, he is slain on the battlefield by the Spartan king Menelaus. And Menelaus strips Euphorbus of his armor, claims that specific shield as a trophy of war, and eventually sails back across the agency.
To dedicate it to the gods at Argos in modern-day Greece.
Exactly.
And this claim, this wild moment in the temple, it introduces us to the first core philosophical pillar of the Pythagorean worldview. Let's fast forward from the ashes of Troy to roughly 570 BCE. We are now on the ancient Greek island of Samos, located in the eastern Aegean Sea, which, still retains the name Samos in Greece today.
Right, his birthplace.
Yes, this is where Pythagoras is born. And it's here, and during his subsequent travels, that he begins to teach a doctrine known in Greek as metempsychosis.
Metempsychosis, yes.
And translating that into simple English, we are talking about the transmigration of souls.
And Pythagoras is among the earliest documented Western philosophers to systematically teach this concept.
It was a pretty radical idea for them, wasn't it?
Oh, incredibly radical. To understand how wild this was, you have to look at the traditional Greek view of the afterlife at the time.
Which was pretty bleak, as I recall.
Very bleak. The standard Homeric belief was that when you died, your shade, basically a ghostly, lesser version of yourself, went down to the underworld, to Hades.
Just to wander aimlessly in the dark gloom forever.
Right. It was a depressing prospect. But Pythagoras introduces a completely different mechanism. He argues that the soul is completely immortal and indestructible.
So it doesn't just fade away in the dark.
No. When the physical body dies, the essence of who you are simply relocates. It cycles into a new physical vessel.
I have to ask the critical question here, just thinking from a public relations standpoint.
Sure. PR in the ancient world.
Yeah. If you are Pythagoras and your goal is to convince the ancient Greek public that you are this divinely inspired philosopher, why choose Euphorbus?
The great question.
I mean, why pick a guy who gets famously brutally killed in the text? He's essentially a loser in the narrative. If you're making up a past life, why not claim to be a king? Why not be Achilles or Hector or even Priam?
It is a brilliant strategic question, and it really cuts to the heart of how ancient credibility worked. Think about the role of the Iliad in the 6th century BCE.
Oh, it's huge.
It was not just a piece of literature. It was their combined theology, history textbook, and cultural encyclopedia.
Like their Bible and their History Channel combined.
Exactly. By claiming to be Euphorbus, Pythagoras is meticulously anchoring his spiritual authority in universally accepted established history.
Ah, I see.
If he walked into Argos and claimed to be Achilles, the priest would have laughed him out of the temple.
Because it would be too grandiose, right? Too arrogant and clearly a fabrication.
Exactly. It would be like someone today walking around claiming to be the reincarnation of George Washington or Julius Caesar. But Euphorbus, he was a nobleman, he was a respected warrior, famous enough to be explicitly named in Homer's epic, but he wasn't a demigod.
So it hits that sweet spot of being famous but believable.
Yes, it is a highly believable claim within their cultural framework. For a student analyzing history, this is an incredibly savvy political and social maneuver.
It's genius, really.
When Pythagoras walked into that temple and identified the specific shield of a man who died in their most famous epic, he provided tangible physical proof of a completely invisible spiritual concept.
He used the cultural weight of Troy to validate his personal theology. And if you think about how that mechanism operates in modern society, it's everywhere.
Oh, constantly.
We see political leaders, social movements, and even corporations constantly trying to trace their lineage back to a revered historical moment. A founding father, a famous civil rights struggle, a recognized revolution.
It is an attempt to borrow credibility.
Exactly. Pythagoras is essentially saying, my philosophy of the soul isn't some new radical invention. It is ancient, and the proof is hanging right there on your temple wall.
And that tangible proof of immortality was really a necessary foundation for the next phase of his life, which involved a massive geographical and cultural upheaval.
Right, because he doesn't stay in Samos.
No, around 530 BCE, Pythagoras leaves his birthplace. The historical consensus among classical scholars is that he was fleeing the tyrannical rule of Polycrates.
Polycrates, what was his deal?
Well, Polycrates was this ambitious and ruthless ruler who had seized control of Samos. He turned it into a major naval power, but he also established a highly oppressive regime.
So things were getting a bit too hot politically.
Exactly. Fleeing this political climate, Pythagoras embarks on a journey westward across the Mediterranean to a city called Croton.
Let's map Croton for everyone. Today, it is the city of Croton, situated in the Calabria region of southern Italy. It's right there on the arch of the Italian boot.
Beautiful area.
Yeah. So what kind of world is Pythagoras stepping into when he lands in Italy?
He is stepping into a completely different environment.
Yeah.
Southern Italy and coastal Sicily in the 6th century BCE were known collectively as Magna Graecia, which translates to Greater Greece.
Greater Greece.
Yes, and it is vital to understand that this was not some remote, uncultured frontier. Magna Graecia was a sprawling, interconnected network of incredibly wealthy, independent Greek colonies. Because of rich agricultural land and prime trade routes, these cities were economic and intellectual powerhouses. They were heavily involved in philosophical innovation and fierce political rivalries.
So Pythagoras arrives in this fertile, wealthy environment of Greater Greece, and he establishes what history calls his school. But, you know, this is where the terminology really trips us up.
It does. School is the wrong word entirely.
Yeah, when a modern student hears School of Philosophy, they picture a university. They picture enrolling in a seminar, showing up twice a week, taking some notes on ethics, and then going out for drinks afterward.
And that modern definition has to be completely discarded here. In the 6th century BCE, particularly in the Pythagorean context, philosophy was not an academic subject.
What was it then?
It was a bios. That Greek word translates simply, yet with absolute demand, as a way of life.
A way of life.
Yes. You did not study Pythagorean philosophy. You lived it with every single breath from the moment you woke up to the moment you went to sleep.
To put that into perspective, joining Pythagoras was less like enrolling in a graduate program at Oxford and much more like joining an incredibly strict, silent monastery, except all the monks happen to be deeply obsessed with mathematics.
A monastery is a highly accurate comparison. And the reason this bios, this way of life, had to be so incredibly rigorous is tied directly back to our first point, the transmigration of souls.
Right, the reincarnation cycle.
Exactly. Pythagoras taught that this cycle of reincarnation was not a gift, it was a trap.
A trap.
Yes, your immortal soul is trapped in an endless, agonizing cycle of being reborn into physical bodies, experiencing pain, disease, and death over and over again.
So it's not like, oh, cool, I get to be a bird next. It's suffering.
Exactly. Your primary desperate goal in life should be to escape that cycle. You do it through a concept called catharsis, which translates to purification. The soul had to be cleansed of its physical, worldly attachments. Pythagoras believed that this purification could only be achieved through extreme, unwavering discipline of both the physical body and the intellectual mind.
Let's dig into the ancient texts to see what this catharsis actually looked like in practice, because the evidence points to a regime that would frankly break most people today.
It was intense.
Diogenes Laërtius writes about a practice called Echemythia, which was a vow of absolute silence. New initiates into the community were allegedly required to remain completely silent for up to 5 years.
5 whole years.
5 years without speaking a single word. What is the mechanism there? How does not talking purify the soul?
It is entirely about demonstrating total mastery over the physical self. The tongue is the easiest way to give in to impulse, emotion, and ego.
That makes sense. We all speak without thinking sometimes.
Right. So if you can control your urge to speak, to defend yourself, to offer your opinion for 5 uninterrupted years, you have proven that your rational mind has completely subjugated your base physical desires.
It's the ultimate exercise in self-control.
It is. And beyond silence, they practiced communal sharing of all property, basically eradicating personal greed, and they observed incredibly strict dietary taboos.
The most famous of those taboos, of course, being vegetarianism. And I want to pose a thought experiment to you, the listener, right now. Think about the logic of the transmigration of souls.
It's a very logical progression, actually.
Yeah, if you truly deeply believe that human souls cycle through the bodies of animals, if you genuinely thought that the cow grazing in the field might currently house the soul of your deceased grandfather or a friend who died in battle, wouldn't vegetarianism be the absolute only moral choice you could make?
It ceases to be a dietary preference and becomes a strict moral imperative. Consuming meat in the Pythagorean worldview was perilously close to cannibalism. But we also have to contextualize how radical this was in ancient Greek society. The entire bedrock of Greek civic and religious life was the animal sacrifice.
Right, you couldn't do anything without sacrificing an animal.
Exactly. City festivals, political treaties, temple worship, they all revolve around slaughtering an animal, offering the fat to the gods, and then communally eating the meat.
So sitting out on the meat wasn't just a health choice.
No, to refuse to eat meat was to publicly reject the fundamental social fabric of the city. It marked you as a radical outsider, someone operating under an entirely different set of laws.
Speaking of operating under different laws, let's examine how this intensely disciplined community was actually structured. Because if you have a group of people practicing radical silence, refusing traditional religion, and living communally, they need organization.
They absolutely needed a hierarchy.
Right. Pythagoras established what was called the Homokoion, which we translate as the Sacred Brotherhood, at Croton. How did this brotherhood function internally?
The Homokoion was deeply hierarchical, operating essentially as a two-tiered society. The first tier, the entry-level membership, were the Akousmatikoi.
Akousmatikoi.
Yes.
So these are the people who have committed to the lifestyle, but they are kept at a distance. What exactly were they allowed to know?
Well, the Akousmatikoi were given the practical guidelines of the cult. They were taught the ethical precepts, the behavioral rules, and the strict dietary restrictions.
Like a rule book.
Exactly. For instance, they were given the famous Pythagorean maxims, like the rule against eating fava beans, or the instruction to always put your right shoe on first.
So specific.
Very. They were given the what of Pythagorean life, but crucially, they were not given the why.
They didn't get the explanations.
No, they were not taught the underlying logic, the deep mathematical structure of the universe. That sacred knowledge was exclusively reserved for the second tier.
The inner circle.
These were the chosen few who had endured the years of silence, proven their absolute discipline, and purified their minds enough to be entrusted with the most profound, esoteric secrets of the cosmos.
The dynamic between the outer listeners and the inner initiates feels very familiar to anyone who studies secret societies.
Oh, it's the classic blueprint.
It really is. It
Yeah.
carries this high curiosity element of hidden knowledge and coded communication. But instead of medieval guilds protecting masonry techniques or modern tech companies siloing proprietary algorithms with non-disclosure agreements, the Pythagoreans were guarding mathematics.
And they took it incredibly seriously.
And they used actual visual symbols to identify each other, right? Like a secret handshake, but geometric.
They absolutely did, because, they lived in a world without digital communication and often operated under vows of silence or in hostile political environments.
They couldn't just text each other.
Right, they needed physical, visual markers of membership. The ancient texts outlined specific geometric symbols that served this exact purpose. And the most prominent among them was the pentagram.
A regular five-pointed star.
Correct. Now, we have to strip away centuries of subsequent cultural baggage here.
Yeah, because today people hear pentagram and they immediately think of, like, horror movies.
Exactly. To the Pythagoreans, the pentagram had absolutely no association with the occult, witchcraft, or dark magic, as it often does in modern pop culture.
What did it mean to them?
To them, the pentagram was a symbol of health, perfection, and cosmic proportion. It is a shape that mathematically embodies the golden ratio.
So it was pure, beautiful math.
Yes. But as revered as the pentagram was, there was a symbol that was considered even more sacred.
What was that?
The Tetractys.
Okay, we need to carefully break down the Tetractys because this is the moment where the mathematics starts to blend seamlessly with the mysticism. What exactly is a Tetractys?
The Tetractys is a triangular figure consisting of 10 points, usually depicted as pebbles or dots drawn in the sand, arranged in 4 rows.
Okay, 4 rows.
Imagine an equilateral triangle. The top row has 1 point. The second row down has 2 points. The third row has 3 points. And the bottom row has 4 points.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right. And if you do the simple addition, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals exactly 10.
So it's a visual representation of an equation. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. But why did they care so much about a triangle made of 10 dots?
Because for the Mathematikoi, this was not just a clever visual math trick. It was a profound theological statement.
Theological, really?
Yes, they considered the number 10 to be the perfect number, the divine foundation that encompassed the entire mathematical and musical universe. Well, it contained the first 4 integers, which they believed represented the progression of physical reality. Like, 1 point is a singularity, 2 points create a line, 3 points create a flat surface or plane, and 4 points create a 3-dimensional solid, like a tetrahedron.
Oh, wow. So it builds all of reality.
Exactly. The Tetractys was viewed as so holy, so fundamental to reality, that initiates would swear their most solemn oaths upon it in the exact way someone today might swear on a Bible or a Quran.
Which raises an incredibly important question about the dissemination of knowledge. Why the extreme secrecy?
That's hard for us to grasp today.
If you discover a brilliant geometric proof today, or you write a groundbreaking algorithm, the goal is publication. You publish it in a journal, you open source it on the internet, you share it to advance the field.
Right, you want the Nobel Prize.
Exactly. Why were the Pythagoreans guarding this knowledge as if it were the launch codes for a nuclear weapon?
That question highlights a massive shift in how humanity views knowledge. Today, we view mathematics as a secular public utility.
Like a tool.
Exactly. It is an incredibly useful tool we deploy to engineer bridges, balance global economies, or write software code. But to Pythagoras and the inner initiates, mathematics was not a human invention. It was divine revelation.
It was the literal voice of the gods.
It was the hidden, sacred architecture of the cosmos. To hand over these divine mathematical secrets to the uninitiated, to people who had not put in the grueling physical and mental work to purify their souls through catharsis, was not just bad academic practice.
It was worse than that.
It was viewed as dangerous heresy. It was giving a loaded weapon to a child, or throwing pearls before swine. The knowledge required a purified vessel.
But keeping these secrets actually produced a fascinating unintended consequence.
How so?
Well, because these initiates utilized these visual handshakes, like drawing a pentagram on a wall or arranging 10 pebbles into a tetractys on a tavern table to identify one another safely, they developed the ability to recognize fellow members across different cities in Magna Graecia without ever having spoken a single word.
They created a decentralized, silent network of trust.
And because they possessed this built-in network of trusted, highly disciplined, mathematically gifted individuals, the movement grew exponentially.
It really exploded across the region.
You see the rapid expansion of Pythagorean clubs establishing themselves across all the major cities of Greater Greece. It morphed from a localized, eccentric cult in Croton into a regional, transnational, political, and intellectual force.
And that intellectual force was driven, fundamentally, by a single, earth-shattering empirical discovery. If there is a pivot point, not just in the life of Pythagoras, but arguably in the development of Western civilization, we are about to discuss it.
This is the moment I've been waiting for, because this is the great aha moment of antiquity. Pythagoras is investigating music.
Right, something we experience emotionally.
He wants to understand the relationship between a physical object, a plucked string, and the sound it produces. And through his experiments, he makes arguably the greatest empirical breakthrough of the ancient world.
It's astounding.
He discovers that musical harmony, something that feels entirely emotional and subjective, is actually just disguised mathematics.
It is a stunning realization. Let's walk through the actual mechanics of how he proved this, because it requires absolutely no modern technology to understand, just a sharp analytical mind and an ear for harmony. Now, the legend involves him listening to blacksmiths hitting anvils with different-sized hammers, but the actual scientific mechanism is best understood through an instrument called a monochord.
A monochord, so literally a single string.
Yes. Imagine a single string of a set length, stretched tight over a wooden sounding board, with a movable bridge sitting underneath the string.
Sort of like a one-stringed guitar.
Very much like that. When you pluck the full open string, it vibrates and produces a specific musical note. Pythagoras wanted to know what happens when you alter the physical length of the vibrating string in precise, measurable increments.
So he takes that movable bridge and he slides it right to the middle of the string, physically dividing it in half. What happens mechanically?
By placing the bridge in the exact middle, he creates a ratio of 1 to 2. The string is now half as long. When he plucks that half string, the pitch jumps up.
It goes higher.
Yes, but it creates the exact same musical note as the open string, just higher. In musical terminology, he created a perfect octave. To the human ear, those two notes sound completely naturally harmonious together.
But he didn't stop at the octave. He kept experimenting with the bridge.
He did. He found that if you divide the string length using a ratio of 3 to 4, you produce a different harmony, what musicians today call a perfect fourth.
A fourth, right.
And if you move the bridge again to divide the string by a ratio of 2 to 3, you produce a perfect fifth.
Wait, look at those numbers for a second. 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 2 to 3. Those are the exact integers from the sacred Tetractys we just talked about. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
They are the exact same numbers.
Okay.
The sacred triangle of 10 dots wasn't just abstract philosophy. It literally contained the ratios that govern the harmony of music.
That is just, it's wild to think about them discovering that.
Now, let's pause and analyze the immense consequence of this physical discovery for a student of ancient history. Think about what music is.
It's feeling, it's emotion.
Right. To the ancient mind, music is an invisible, emotional, almost magical force. A certain melody can make a person weep. A driving rhythm can make an army march to war. A soft lullaby can soothe an infant.
It feels entirely subjective, spiritual, and mysterious.
But Pythagoras proves through the Monochord that it isn't mysterious or subjective at all.
Right, he proves definitively that this invisible, deeply emotional force is actually governed by rigid, predictable, immutable mathematical laws.
The visible cosmos is playing by numerical rules.
And the immediate, massive logical leap the Pythagoreans made was profound. If something as invisible and emotional as music is actually governed by rigid mathematical laws, what else is?
And the conclusion they arrived at was everything. Literally everything in existence.
This specific intellectual leap marks the birth of arithmology.
Arithmology? Yes. We need a working definition for that.
It essentially means the study of numbers as the fundamental cosmic bedrock of reality.
Yes, and this philosophy leads to an entirely new conception of the universe itself. In fact, the Pythagoreans are credited with being the first to refer to the universe as the cosmos.
Cosmos. The Greek word meaning order, or an ordered system.
The opposite of chaos.
Order implies rules. Order implies an underlying structure. If we zoom out and connect this to the macro picture of human history, this is a monumental paradigm shift.
It changes everything about how humans view reality.
For thousands of years prior to this, humanity relied almost exclusively on mythological narratives to explain how the natural world functioned.
Right. Story-based explanations.
Why does the thunder crash violently in the sky? Because Zeus is angry on Mount Olympus. Why does the sea rage and destroy ships? Because Poseidon has been insulted and is seeking vengeance.
Why do the seasons change? Because Demeter is mourning the loss of her daughter to the underworld.
The universe was basically a giant soap opera driven by moody, unpredictable gods.
It was capricious. It was deeply unpredictable, governed entirely by the shifting emotions of divine beings. But the Pythagorean discovery of mathematical ratios governing sound in nature is the exact moment humanity begins transitioning away from that mythological worldview.
It's the dawn of a new era.
They introduced the foundational concept of rational science, the radical idea that the universe operates on quantifiable mathematical laws that exist completely independently of human desire or divine emotion.
I want to clarify something here, though, because this is where modern listeners can easily project their own understanding backward onto the ancient world.
It's a common trap for history students.
Yeah. When a modern engineer or architect uses math today, they use it as a descriptive tool. I use math to measure the square footage of a room or to calculate the load-bearing capacity of a steel beam.
Right. It's a utility.
But the Pythagoreans didn't just think math was a tool to measure the physical universe. They believed numbers were the literal essence and building blocks of reality itself, didn't they?
That is a vital, essential distinction for history students to grasp. The Pythagoreans did not say the universe can be described by numbers.
What did they say?
They explicitly said the universe is numbers. They believed that numbers possess both physical and spiritual reality.
So a number wasn't just an idea.
No, a single point in space was the physical manifestation of the number 1. A line drawn between 2 points was the number 2. A flat surface was the number 3. A three-dimensional solid object was the number 4.
Oh, I see.
To them, physical matter, everything you can touch and see, was just the manifestation of numerical geometry. Numbers were the underlying source code of physical reality.
The source code of reality. We are going to come back to that exact phrase in just a moment because it has massive implications for where we are today.
Oh, absolutely it does.
But chronologically, we have to trace the narrative to the end of Pythagoras' physical life. It's roughly 500 to 495 BCE. You would think a man who unlocked the mathematical secrets of music and the cosmos would get to retire peacefully as an esteemed elder statesman.
You would hope so.
But that is rarely how ancient Greek politics operated.
It almost never ends peacefully for figures wielding immense concentrated influence. The Pythagorean Brotherhood in Croton had become incredibly powerful, socially, intellectually, and crucially, politically.
They were running things.
The initiates held prominent positions in the city's government, and history shows us that whenever a secretive, elitist society gains immense political power while operating behind closed doors, resentment from the general populace is inevitable.
The local citizens of Croton pushed back against the cult.
Fiercely and violently. There was a massive political uprising in Croton, often attributed in the ancient sources to a wealthy nobleman named Cylon.
Cylon.
Yes, who had actually been rejected from membership in the Brotherhood.
Oh, so it was personal.
Very personal. An anti-Pythagorean faction whipped the public into a frenzy and led a violent revolt against the Mathematikoi. Their meeting houses were surrounded and burned to the ground.
That's horrifying.
Many of the inner initiates were killed in the fires or slaughtered as they fled. Pythagoras himself is forced to flee the city he had transformed. He spends his final years as an exile, seeking refuge in a city called Metapontum.
Metapontum, which today is located near the modern town of Metaponto, in the Basilicata region of southern Italy. So he dies in exile, a refugee from his own movement, around 495 BCE.
It's a sad end.
It feels like a tragic, abrupt end to a story of such immense intellectual discovery.
It really could have been the end of the story, if not for the brilliant, resilient structure of the Brotherhood he created.
Because the network survived.
The movement did not die with him in Metapontum. Because of that vast, silent network of visual symbols and the shared, grueling discipline of the initiates, the survivors who scattered maintained the philosophy.
They just laid low.
The clubs went underground but continued to spread to other Magna Graecia cities like Sybaris and Tarentum.
And crucially for us today, the philosophy was fiercely preserved and written down by classical writers centuries later. People like Ovid, Porphyry, and Diogenes Laërtius documented the legends, the mathematical proofs, and strict rules of the cult.
They kept the flame alive.
By recording these traditions, they ensured Pythagoras' transition from a localized, esoteric cult leader into a foundational historical figure of Western thought.
His legacy became the bedrock. He became the father of number theory and the grandfather of geometric proof, laying the necessary intellectual foundation for giants like Plato, Euclid, and eventually the entire European scientific revolution thousands of years later.
Which brings us crashing into the modern connection. And here is where this ancient history gets incredibly relevant to you listening right now.
This is the mind-bending part.
We started this journey with a man claiming a blood-stained shield in a dusty ancient temple, but we are ending up right in your pocket, right on the computer screen or smartphone you are using right now.
If we look closely at the architecture of the modern digital landscape, particularly the recent explosion of artificial intelligence and machine learning, we find a profound, almost eerie analogy to Pythagorean arithmology.
Let's break down the mechanics of this because it's honestly just wild. When you interact with a modern AI model today, when you type a prompt into a large language model chatbot, or you ask an AI image generator to create a picture of a cat riding a bicycle, it feels incredibly human.
It really does feel like you're talking to a purser.
It feels like the AI is understanding your English words, reading your syntax, or thinking in visual images, but it isn't doing that at all.
No, it has no comprehension of language or imagery in the human sense. An AI model operates entirely, 100%, through numerical vectors, matrices, and multidimensional geometry.
Let's explain how an AI translates human concepts into math so we can see the connection to Pythagoras.
Sure, let's walk through it.
If I type the word apple into an AI, what is actually happening beneath the surface?
Through a process called word embedding, the software strips away the English letters. It translates the concept of an apple into a long list of numbers. A vector.
Yeah, a vector.
Imagine plotting a point on a graph, but instead of just an X and Y axis, the graph has thousands of dimensions. The word apple is assigned a specific coordinate location in that multidimensional mathematical space, perhaps near coordinates representing fruit or red.
So it's turning language into spatial geometry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you ask the AI a question, it is rapidly comparing billions of these number lists using matrix multiplication to mathematically calculate the geometric distance between concepts to predict the most probable response.
So it is literally performing complex geometry in thousands of dimensions to fake human language.
Exactly. The machine's entire reality is a vast, multidimensional mathematical structure. To a modern software engineer, this mechanism is simply applied linear algebra and probability.
Just math.
But try for a moment to imagine explaining the mechanics of a neural network to a 6th century BCE Pythagorean initiate.
Oh, man. If you told an initiate that you built a box that can compose poetry, create art, and answer philosophical questions, and it does it entirely by manipulating pure numbers and geometric shapes, they would view that as a religious miracle.
They absolutely would. To a Pythagorean, a modern artificial intelligence network would not be seen as just a neat, profitable piece of silicon technology. It would be viewed as the ultimate, undeniable proof of their core religious belief.
The belief that mind, information, and reality are inherently fundamentally numerical structures.
We often think of Pythagoras as ancient, distant history, a relic of the Bronze and Iron Ages. But in reality, we have not outgrown Pythagoras at all.
We're just catching up to him.
By digitizing our entire world, by reducing human thought, language, art, and even social interaction into billions of numerical weights and biases inside a computer server, we are currently actively building his exact vision of the universe.
We are literally building the cosmos, the ordered universe, made entirely of mathematics inside our silicon chips. We've just swapped out 10 pebbles in the sand for billions of transistors.
It is the ultimate vindication of the Mathematikoi. They hypothesize that the universe is just numbers. We are proving their hypothesis by successfully creating a new, functioning universe completely out of numbers.
Let's pull all of these threads together because we have covered an immense expanse of historical and intellectual ground today.
We really have.
We started with a single, highly theatrical moment. A man standing in a temple in the Peloponnese, pointing at a decaying bronze shield and claiming to house the reincarnated soul of a Trojan warrior.
Euphorbus.
Right. And from that claim of immortality, we tracked his flight from tyranny to southern Italy, where he built a secret, strictly vegetarian mathematical cult bound by vows of silence and physical purification.
The bios.
Yes, the bios. And we followed the consequences of his experiments with a single vibrating string to the foundational bedrock of modern digital computation.
And if there is one core, enduring takeaway for the history student analyzing all of this, it is that human history is never a series of isolated events neatly categorized in separate textbooks.
Nothing happens in a vacuum.
Exactly. Ideas bleed into one another. Religion drives science, and science reinforces religion. The deep, agonizing spiritual desire to purify the soul through catharsis is what directly caused Pythagoras and his followers to enforce the rigorous, disciplined study of geometry.
It was a spiritual quest first.
Yes, and that religious study of musical ratios consecutively birthed the concept of rational science. Without the mystic making theatrical claims about a shield, we simply do not get the mathematician mapping the stars and uncovering the source code of reality.
It is entirely interconnected, the magic, the math, the myth, and the machine. So I want to leave you with a final lingering question to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Ooh, provocative thought.
We have established that modern artificial intelligence is essentially a digital manifestation of Pythagorean arithmology. But let's take it one step further down the philosophical rabbit hole.
Let's hear it.
If Pythagoras was right all along, if the physical universe and the human mind and the essence of the soul are fundamentally just complex mathematical structures, and we are currently building complex artificial minds entirely out of mathematical vectors and numbers, are we simply creating the next technological vessels for the transmigration of souls?
A profoundly unsettling and fascinating thought.
Think about that the next time you ask a chatbot a question and it answers back. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the brilliant, bizarre, and foundational ancient world.
We deeply appreciate you taking the time to explore the depths of history with us today.